So today we're going to talk about some of the best FPL players to buy for game week 5, and we're going to start off by talking about Ollie Watkins. And now guys, look, I am no expert, I don't claim to be an expert, so you don't have to listen to what I say at all, but I really do believe Ollie Watkins should be considered for game week 5. Alright, he blanked, he didn't score in the first 2 games, and he didn't score in the first three games in fact. However, he's finally got off the mark now. 2 goals in the last game against Everton, and I really do believe Ollie Watkins' form will start to pick up, his confidence will pick up, and I just think from now on, from this point on, Ollie Watkins will be a great FPL asset at the price of 8.9 million. First things first, I want to say this, I don't think sort of the mental aspect and confidence should be ignored and form should be ignored in FPL. I think it's definitely something to consider. And look, Ollie Watkins in the first 3 games wasn't really performing, wasn't really delivering. He was getting a lot of chances, but he was consistently missing those chances. But now he's got off the mark. Now he's finally got his first Premier League goals of the season. I genuinely believe Ollie Watkins will become more confident and as a result start to score even more goals in the upcoming fixtures. Because look, Aston Villa really do have good fixtures coming up. They got Wolves at home in game week 5, Ipswich away in game week 6, Manchester United at home in game week 7, and Fulham away in game week 8, and even in game week 9 I think they have Bournemouth at home as well, which is a great fixture. So the fixtures are there for Aston Villa. Ollie Watkins is finally off the mark, so you'd argue, you know, he's going to be feeling confident, and as a result, look, first things first, we know Ollie Watkins is a Premier League proven striker. We saw what he did last season, so the proof is in the pudding with Ollie Watkins, and now that he's finally scored with these fixtures, I believe he will continue to score goals. And look, the underlying data as well, guys, is absolutely fantastic. This is the thing, Ollie Watkins, the thing is with Ollie Watkins is, yes, he wasn't returning before, but at least he was getting the chances. So Ollie Watkins was getting the chances, you know, he should have scored a brace against Arsenal, he should have scored against Leicester, and then now finally he did score the 2 goals against Everton. So the chances have been there for Ollie Watkins, and now he's converting those chances. So with that being said, I genuinely believe Ollie Watkins is a great option for the upcoming game weeks. And one thing I do want to talk about as well is, yes, there is an argument to be made that with Champions League, with John Duran being a really good backup striker, there is an argument to be made that, you know, the early substitutions with Ollie Watkins can still continue. That is something I guess you could worry about, and that's a fair point to make. You know, Champions League and the possible rotation and early substitutions with Don Duran is a good point, is a good argument to go against Ollie Watkins. But for me, given the fact that Aston Villa have such good fixtures, I don't think it's enough to sway me to say to change my mind and to change my opinion on Ollie Watkins being a good option. So of course it's something to consider, it's something, you know, to think about, but for me it's not enough to not go for Ollie Watkins. So yeah, guys, for me, I think Ollie Watkins is a great, fantastic option. He's finally off the mark, and look, like I said, Ollie Watkins is a Premier League proven striker, so I definitely would consider buying Ollie Watkins for game week 5. So next up we do have Joshua Zirkzee, and some of you guys may laugh at me for this, but I actually really do think Zirkzee should be someone to consider for game week 5. And look, I'm wildcarding, I'm most likely going to wildcard in game week 6, and he is someone I'm considering for my own team as well. So if I'm considering him, I'm obviously going to recommend him to you guys as well, because I wouldn't recommend someone to you guys that I wouldn't personally put in myself. And look, I think Zirkzee honestly could be a really good differential pick, guys. First things first, I want to say this, Joshua Zirkzee has been getting chances. Look, I'm a Manchester United fan, and of course I watch all our games. I just watch the Premier League in general, right? I'm a big fan of the eye test. Of course I'll provide you guys stats as well, but I always like to watch football and gauge an opinion for myself by watching teams. And on the eye test, first things first, Zirkzee, in my opinion, is a really good overall footballer. So that's a good, you know, first thing to point out. I actually think he's a good footballer. And the second thing I want to point out is that he's getting chances. He's only got 1 goal so far, and I'm not going to lie, he should have more than 1 goal. Zirkzee should have more than 1 goal at this point in time. But what I like is that he's getting the chances, and in my opinion, being relatively unlucky, quite unlucky not to score. For example, in the last game against Southampton, he could have walked away from that game with 2 goals. Even against Liverpool, for example, in the second half towards the end of the game, he had 2 big chances where he realistically should have scored. And look, you guys might say, yes, it's a good thing that he's getting chances, but ultimately FPL is about goals and assists. So yes, you may be getting the chances, but you have to deliver. You have to show some end product. You have to show that you are capable of scoring goals. And I do understand that, but I think I've watched Zirkzee, you know, in Serie A. I checked out his highlights and he does seem like a relatively good finisher. So I do believe more goals will come, but I think it's a good first sign that Zirkzee is actually getting into good positions, and you know, he's had a lot of big chances created for him. So look, for me, the underlying data as well does prove that, you know, 0.74 expected goals per 90 is also really strong. So look, Zirkzee's getting the chances. So that's why I've got my eye on Zirkzee, and that's why I think you guys should be thinking about him too, because he is getting the chances, and I personally do think the goals will come. You could argue there's a bit of Manchester United bias there for me, but I really do think the goals will come, and he's someone that I'm looking at as well, because look, 3.8% ownership is really low. It's a massive differential, and I think he could really do well in the next few upcoming game weeks. I mean, it's Crystal Palace away in game week 5. That's a really good fixture in my opinion. It may not be green on the fixture ticker, but Crystal Palace defensively this season haven't been good at all. Spurs at home as well is a good fixture. They're not the strongest defensive team. Aston Villa away from home. Again, for me, it's not as hard as it seems. I really think Manchester United could get a couple of goals away to Aston Villa, and then Brentford at home in game week 8. But even when you look longer than sort of the next 4 to 5 game weeks, Manchester United have brilliant fixtures. I mean, I'm going to show you guys this right now. Have a look at our fixtures from game week 5 onwards, all the way up until about game week 15. For me, it's very strong. It's very strong. You know, you've got Brentford in game week 8 at home, West Ham away, Chelsea at home, Leicester at home, Ipswich away there in game week 12, Everton at home in game week 13. So I think Zirkzee could be a good long-term option in my opinion. Now, of course, there is, you know, Rasmus Højlund to come back from injury. You know, when he comes back from injury, you could argue Zirkzee might get rotated, which is a fair point. But for now, I do think Zirkzee is actually better than Højlund, and I think Zirkzee will be the main Manchester United starting number 9, right? So that's my opinion. Of course, I could be wrong, but yeah, I just think I really do think Zirkzee is gonna be a good pick. I really do, and I'm personally sort of willing to take that risk on Zirkzee as well. And another thing I want to point out on Manchester United is that we are actually doing pretty well in terms of creating chances. As you guys can see by this graphic here, in terms of big chances created, we've created 14 big chances, right? And that actually gives us a Premier League ranking of 3rd. So we are 3rd for the most big chances created so far this season, which is really good, really strong. Shots inside the box, we've had 31. We would rank 9th for that. And in terms of expected goals, we've actually had 7.89 expected goals, which puts us at a Premier League rank of 3rd. So honestly, I look at us as a whole on the eye test and by stats, and I think going forward, you know, we're actually not too bad. So that's why I do like Zirkzee as an option. And of course, guys, there are some other good Manchester United picks. I think Amad Diallo is also a great pick at 5 million in my opinion. If you guys have been following my FPL journey so far, you guys will know that I've got Amad Diallo in my own team. I think he's a great option for 5 million. I think Bruno Fernandes, I'm not the biggest fan of him for an FPL option, but he's the 90-minute man. You know he's going to start every game, so that's the reason why I've put him here. If I knew that Garnacho was going to start, I'd definitely go for him over Bruno Fernandes, but I think Fernandes is just a safer pick. But I do prefer the likes of Garnacho, you know, if I knew he was going to start. And then, of course, if you're looking for a defender, I think Mazraoui could be a decent shout if you're able to rotate him well with other defenders. But yeah, all in all, I think Zirkzee, Amad Diallo, they would definitely be my favourite 2 Manchester United players to buy for game week 5. So next up, we do have Bryan Mbeumo, and guys, I think this man is an absolutely just fantastic option for FPL from game week 5 onwards. Yes, it's Spurs away in game week 5. I don't think that's the worst fixture in the world, but from game week 6 onwards, he certainly is a must-have. He certainly is a fantastic option. From game week 6 onwards, Brentford's fixtures are absolutely fantastic. It's West Ham at home in game week 6, Wolves at home in game week 7, Man United away in game week 8, but then Ipswich at home in game week 9, and then Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, Leicester as well after that. I mean, guys, the fixtures for Brentford are absolutely fantastic. So I personally think Bryan Mbeumo is a must-have. He's already scored 3 goals so far, right? He's already scored 3 goals so far this Premier League season. He gets 90 minutes. He's on penalties. I just think he's just a really good, he's just a great FPL asset to own. Like, he's so reliable. You know he's going to start. You know he's going to play the majority of the game. Like I said, he's on penalties. He only costs 7.1 million. So, yeah, for me, Bryan Mbeumo, just a really good option. And he's just a good set and forget long-term hold. Like, once you put this man in your team, you do not have to worry about him. Honestly, unless he gets injured, you're not going to have to worry about Mbeumo, because again, he's Premier League proven. You know he can get you goals, you know he can get you assists, and he's proven that so far this season as well. So for me, I think he provides great value at the price of just 7.1 million. Now, I do want to quickly talk about Wissa, right? Because at the time of recording, Wissa did come off. So at the time of recording, I don't know if Wissa's going to be injured, right? So I'm recording this on a Monday, right? So yeah, in the last game that Brentford played against Manchester City, Wissa came off injured, right? So we don't know the extent of that injury. Now, look, if it's a long-term injury for Yoane Wissa, there is an argument to be made that possibly does make Bryan Mbeumo a worse option, because look, Wissa and Bryan Mbeumo, they work well together, man. They really do work well together. They're like, I don't know, they just have a really, they're like a B-Tech version of Dwight Yorke and Andy Cole, right? Like, they work well together, they play well together, they bounce off each other, and I like Wissa and Bryan Mbeumo as a partnership. So look, I think if Wissa is injured, there's an argument to be made. It slightly makes Bryan Mbeumo as a worse option, but I will say this, I don't think it's enough to not go for Mbeumo, because Mbeumo is still a quality player within himself, right? Yes, he does work well with Wissa, however, he's still a good player. And look, although Wissa could possibly be injured, Brentford do have, you know, the likes of Carvalho, who's a decent player that can come in for Wissa, for example. So yeah, all in all, I think Bryan Mbeumo is just a fantastic option. And look, I would have also recommended to buy Yoane Wissa as well, but I don't know if he's fit. So yeah, if you guys are watching this sometime in the future when we've got you know, solid news that that Yoane Wissa is fit to play, then I would definitely also recommend Wissa as an FPL asset to get for game week 5 onwards. But yeah, let's move on to the next player. Alright guys, so next up we do have Dominic Solanke, and the reason why I'm going for Dominic Solanke is purely because I do like the fixtures that Tottenham do have. Look, I want to say this, I feel like we haven't seen enough of Dominic Solanke to form a concrete opinion of like how good or bad he's going to be as an asset for FPL, right? We've only seen him playing 2 games, the first game against Leicester and then the second game against Arsenal, which isn't really a good fixture for anyone because Arsenal defense is just absolutely incredible, right? So I don't think we've seen enough of Solanke in a Spurs, in a Tottenham shirt to form a concrete opinion on how good or bad he's going to be. So with that being said, I will say this, I think Dominic Solanke last season was quality, right? We all know how many goals he scored, absolutely fantastic. And typically speaking, a number 9 in an Ange system usually gets a lot of chances created for them. So based off that, I do think Dominic Solanke could be a good option in the upcoming game weeks, right? We saw against Leicester, Dominic Solanke got quite a few chances, failed to convert those chances, yes, but still got a lot of chances. And of course, against Arsenal, he had a good game, I'd say, but he didn't really have any sort of big chances. I mean, he had that one chance where he was just really sloppy on the ball. You know, he took quite a poor touch, couldn't get the ball out of his feet and therefore couldn't get the shot off. But yeah, he didn't really get many chances against Arsenal. But what I will say is the upcoming fixtures are really good for Spurs, for an attacker, for a number 9 in my opinion. You know, you've got Brentford at home in game week 5, Man United away in game week 6, Brighton at home in game week 7, and then West Ham away in game week 8. Even beyond that as well, the fixtures are absolutely fantastic. So look, I do think although Solanke hasn't got any goals or hasn't got any assists so far this season, I definitely think the goals and assists will come. I do think if you put him in as well, it's a good long-term option, because look, we know Solanke's going to start. We know that he's going to get more or less 90 minutes as well. So I really do like Dominic Solanke as sort of an option for the next upcoming game weeks. So yeah, that's just my opinion on Solanke. And typically Spurs, and another thing I want to point out is that Spurs actually, whilst I was watching the Spurs Arsenal game, the commentator actually mentioned the stat, which is pretty interesting, that Spurs actually on average have the highest possession so far in this Premier League season. So I think that's quite a positive sign, because it shows that they're dominating the ball and they're sort of, you know, constantly attacking, right? You know, the more you have the ball, the higher chance you have to score goals. So I do think, you know, Dominic Solanke could be a good option in my opinion. And also, you know, when you look at Tottenham's data, it's not too bad. Their attacking data isn't too bad. Of course, look, Solanke's not being played. To be honest with you, if Solanke played against Everton, I do think he would have got some goals by now, 100%. But yeah, if you look at the Spurs data, it's not too bad. You know, they've created 10 big chances so far this season, which gives them a Premier League ranking of 7th. They've got 40 shots inside the box, which is really, really good. That also gives them a Premier League ranking of 5th. And expected goals, they've only got 5.58, which isn't the best, to be fair. It's not the best, but then they've also got 167 penalty box touches, which gives them a Premier League ranking of 2nd, right? So you can see they're getting into the box a lot. They are getting into the box a lot, and that's a positive sign. So I do think, like I said, typically speaking, an Ange number 9 does get a lot of chances created for them. So on that basis, I do think Dominic Solanke in the upcoming game weeks is definitely someone that you should consider. And like I said, you know, we saw Dominic Solanke last season getting a lot of goals, and like I said, for me, a really, really good option. But he's not the only good Spurs asset, in my opinion, right? I want to talk about Heung-min Son and Pedro Porro. So I'll talk about Pedro Porro first, because I think he's actually better than... I think he's a better option than Son, right? I think Pedro Porro, honestly, is a really, really good FPL asset. In my opinion, he is like, for me... we all know how good Trent is going forward. And in terms of just pure attacking and attacking threat, I think after Trent Alexander-Arnold, Pedro Porro is that guy. He's absolutely fantastic going forward. So for that reason, I would definitely consider buying Pedro Porro for Game Week 5, honestly. Also, Son, look, I think Son is an okay option, but I put Solanke as the main Spurs asset to buy because, like I said, I think Son is just playing really, really wide. Of course, Son is a great finisher, so he doesn't need as many chances as someone like Solanke to get a goal, right? You know, Son is a type of player that can just get one chance and score, right? We know he's one of the most clinical players the Premier League has ever seen in Premier League history, right? Really, really clinical. But for me, I just prefer Dominic Solanke, one, because he's cheaper, but also at Son's price range, you've got Bukayo Saka, who in my opinion is the better FPL asset. So for that reason, I think Son's a good option, but I just think there's better options at his price. So for that reason, I probably wouldn't put him as a priority to buy for Game Week 5, sorry. But if you are someone that wants to put in a differential, then I would definitely recommend Son because he is really, really low owned so far this season. But yeah, let's move on to the next players. So next up, we do have Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Jamie Vardy. I think both players could be really good, cheap enablers for your FPL teams. And I'm going to start off talking about Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So far, he's got 2 goals, 1 assist. Really, really good return in the first 4 Premier League games. And look, the fixtures for Everton are absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic long term, which is why I do like Calvert-Lewin as an option, because look, Calvert-Lewin has proved that he can get goals, right? We know that Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I'd say, is a Premier League proven striker, right? So we know he can score goals, and he showed that so far this season, right? He's a massive threat from set pieces. He relatively plays 90 minutes, more or less. So I think at his price, 5.9 million, guys, I think he could be fantastic. And if you look at these fixtures, man, this fixture run is just absolutely incredible. He's only 2.4% owned as well, so a massive differential, and I think the potential for points is really, really high. Leicester is a great fixture. They're not great defensively. Crystal Palace, they're not good defensively. Newcastle are looking shaky in my opinion based off the eye test. Ipswich aren't the best teams. Fulham is a good fixture. Southampton, West Ham, I mean, I could go on and on and on. These fixtures are absolutely fantastic, and like I said, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a Premier League proven striker. So although Everton are a pretty crap team defensively, I think going forward, you know, they do create, you know, a decent amount of chances for their attackers, and I just think Dominic Calvert-Lewin should be considered in my opinion. So yeah, I would definitely be looking at him. Yeah, a really, really good option in my opinion. Now, another thing I do want to point out, another player I do want to speak about is Jamie Vardy, because I also do think he's a great option. So let's compare them, because first thing, actually before I compare them, I'll show you guys Jamie Vardy's fixtures. Again, Jamie Vardy is a great long-term option because the fixtures are absolutely fantastic. Apart from that fixture against Arsenal in Game Week 6, Leicester have a great run of fixtures, right? Everton at home, Bournemouth at home, Southampton away, Forest at home, Ipswich. Like, their fixture run is really, really good. And again, Jamie Vardy, 7.8% ownership, slightly higher than Calvert-Lewin, but still a massive differential. I think he could be a good option in my opinion. So with that being said, who do you go for? Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Jamie Vardy? Now, let's have a quick compare on their stats. So as you guys can see on screen right now, Dominic Calvert-Lewin has an average of 5.6 points per match compared to Jamie Vardy's 4.8 points per match. They both have 2 goals, but Dominic Calvert-Lewin has 1 assist compared to Jamie Vardy's 0 assists. And in terms of the underlying data, in terms of just expected goals and expected assists, you can see that overall Calvert-Lewin is slightly better. In terms of expected goals, Calvert-Lewin has 0.34 compared to Jamie Vardy's 0.40, right? But in terms of expected assists, Dominic Calvert-Lewin absolutely destroys Jamie Vardy with 0.12 expected assists compared to Jamie Vardy's 0.02. So overall, I'd say Dominic, in terms of underlying data and actual output, for me, Dominic Calvert-Lewin looks to be the better option, especially when you combine the fact that the fixtures for Everton are much better for much longer as well compared to Leicester. So on that basis, I would probably say Dominic Calvert-Lewin is probably the better option for a long-term option compared to Jamie Vardy. So that's going to be it for today's transfer targets video. I really hope you did enjoy. If you did, make sure you smash a big thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to turn on post notifications as well. But guys, I will catch you in the next video. But until then, I'm out. Peace.